Hello, and welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Shop with Russ. This is Season 1, Episode 6, and tonight we're going to be visiting Nick Ferry's shop, and he's going to let us, or show us, his table saw, and we're going to talk about table saws tonight. So I'm really glad to have you, Nick. Thank you very much. And we're going to go down the line first, and everybody can introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about where we can find you, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook. And I'll start from my left, and every time he's on the show, he gets it too. He knows who I'm talking about, don't you? Yeah, it's Chris. For some reason, every time you come on the show, you're on the far left, buddy.
What's up with that? Well, thank you. I appreciate that. My name's Chris Cute. You can find me on YouTube under that name and also on Facebook under Make the First Cut. So thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
He is for me, too.
Next is Chris Ahern. Go ahead and tell us where we can find you.
Right. Yeah, Chris Ahern. You can find me on Facebook at Chris Ahern or the Old Cranky Workshop. And my YouTube videos are under Chris the Wheeler. I still haven't figured out how to change the title of that, so stuck with it for now. But that's it.
Next in line is Mr. Jason.
Yeah, you can find me at mcginnswoodshop.ca. That's McGinns woodshop.ca. And you get all my social media and stuff like that. I'm on YouTube and Facebook and all the fun stuff. That's it. That's me.
Next is John Cousins.
Hey everybody, how's it going? John Cousins here. You can find me on Facebook under John P.A. Cousins, or on Facebook under my wood page, Wood If I Could. That's what I have.
Great. Next in line, I don't think I know him. His name's Rich. I don't know your last name, so go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Yeah, Rich McNatt. You can find me on YouTube under Rich McNatt. Webpage is woodworksbyrich.com.
Nice to have you, and glad you were able to join us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Next is Mr. Russ Meadows.
Yeah, I'm Russ Meadows. You can find me on Facebook under that name, and also my Facebook page, Rusty Nail Woodworks.
And of course, I'm the better-looking Russ of the two of us. And you can find me under Simply Wooden Creations on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. And if you would like me and subscribe to me on YouTube, I sure would appreciate it. So let's get down to it. And Nick, you can introduce yourself and pretty well take off with the show and show us what you got. Make it decent, though.
Make it decent. That's gonna be that's some big shoes to fill. My name is Nick.
Wear your pants this time, Nick.
Hey, if the camera is belly up, there's really no need for pants in a shop. Am I right? Am I right? Come on.
That's right.
My name is Nick Ferry. You can find me on YouTube if you type in Nick Ferry in the search bar, or just nickferry.com, and there's lots of extras over there that's not on YouTube. So yeah.
All right. Well, we're here to talk about the table saw, so you've got the show. You got the floor.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Russ. I appreciate that. And I was fortunate enough, and I saved my pennies, and I had a somewhat forgiving wife to get the saw stop. And first thing I do want to say is every woodworker is a little bit different. And for me, anyways, the table saw is kind of the backbone of my shop. And if you're a traditionalist, say turner, a bandsaw and a lathe might be the go-to tool. And obviously, you know, and they would be your questions about safety. And like I said, I had gotten a saw stop, and for those that aren't familiar, it has a flesh sensing technology to it, similar to the Art Deco type brass lamps, to where you touch the metal part and it turns on one of the light bulbs in the lamp. They've built that technology into a saw, and there are electronic brakes that basically, with airbag force, shoot an aluminum ball into the blade and with the geometry that the trunnions and everything are set up, within just a fraction of a second, drops the blade below the table saw surface. You normally end up only with like a little nick on your finger rather than very expensive hospital bills. But I actually have a couple.
Does it look just like you?
Does the saw stop look like me?
No, the little nick.
The little nick. Well, I don't know.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Mark Christopher looks a lot like me, so we might just call it a little Mark. I have no idea. But I got a couple different cameras set up here, and I'm going to switch to the, let's see here, the camera above the table saw here. And can you guys all see that all good and fine and dandy?
Yep, we can see it.
All right, as of right now, I have the table saw completely blade-free, riving knife-free, and brake cartridge-free. And if I switch over to the camera below the table saw, you can see the arbor there kind of in the center section. And it almost looks like, Jason, you do computers. Is that like a serial port connection, or what is that that we have there?
That is 9 holes in a serial port connection format, I would say so.
Yep, looks just like one.
Basically right here, and this is kind of where and I know SawStop's been around a while, and for the viewers too, SawStop actually at this point in time is not the only table saw company to have flesh sensing technology. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bosch had a contractor saw come out not too long ago, maybe about 4 months ago.
Right.
But the key to the system as far as the safety is that that 9-pin connection, and that basically goes to, if you could just flip to camera number 2, these cartridges, one of which in this hand here is for a standard blade, a 10-inch blade, and your standard 1/8 kerf. So the actual aluminum brake is a little bit narrower than, say, this particular cartridge, which is I believe it's an 8-inch dado stack. And obviously, with a dado stack, the brake should be a little bit wider. So these different cartridges have the mating connection. And like I said, there's a charge in here. I'm not an electrical engineer by any means of the imagination, but a lot of stuff goes on in here, and it shoots it off. But if you want to switch to the camera 1, I'll show how just setting up this table saw is actually quite easy. A lot of people think it's a big pain in the butt. I still, to this day, do not like showing or do not like doing dado stack changes, but with this particular one, it's actually not too bad at all. But I'll just load this with a regular kerf one, but you can see that connection is going to meet up when it's mating connection, and it just slides on a couple register pins here, and it goes on like so, and it kind of sits flat in place, and then there's just this pin right here. And that pin goes into a hole right here and kind of locks the whole brake assembly down. You want to make sure that that is seated. One of the nice things about this particular saw, or flesh sensing technology saws, is if that pin is actually not fully rotated and the brake cartridge isn't fully seated and properly installed, the onboard diagnostics will actually let you know by a different series of flashing and blinking lights. So it's a little bit different because the camera you guys are looking at is actually coming from the side of the table saw, so it's a little bit different looking at it and using it. But and then
Nick, sorry, but would the saw still work if you didn't want to use the brake and you just wanted to push it through? And could you turn those lights off and the alerts off?
You can operate the saw in bypass mode, which you actually have to do for each and every time you turn on the saw. There's a key in the side of the control panel, and there's a little bit of a procedure you have to go through if you want to cut any type of conductive materials. In fact, a buddy of mine that has been taking different courses at a community college told me something. I'm not quite sure if this is true or not, but lasered wood with that carbon content, he was saying, can set off flesh sensing saw. And I'm not quite sure. I haven't cut through lasered material, and nor do I necessarily want to try it. But That's, and people often say, well, what if I'm cutting wet wood, over my saw? Will the cartridge itself set off? I have a cast iron top on every saw I've ever had. I'm not putting wet wood on it. So if it's moist, I'm not even a fan of like heavily, high moisture content green treated. So I don't know. There's a lot of myths, I guess, to disprove when it comes to that, I suppose.
Well, Nick, if you didn't put that cartridge in there, would that basically just kind of disable the flush sensing technology? And would the saw still run?
You know what? That's actually an interesting. That's a really good question. I have no idea. I could actually try and run it in bypass mode without the cartridge in. I would imagine in bypass mode it would work with or without the cartridge. That would be my best educated guess.
Yeah, I would guess so too. I was curious because if you're going to cut green wood on that, and you don't want to do that with a, the flush sensing technology is there for a reason. But if you're going to cut green wood on it, then you're probably not going to want to have that cartridge in there because that cartridge is kind of expensive. I mean, what does that cost for that thing?
I think your standard kerf cartridge is right around $75 to $80.
Right. And so you don't really necessarily want that going off if you're cutting green wood on your table saw.
It depends on the moisture content, and when I mentioned green treated because I know a lot of people, if they pick up, say, like fence boards or 4x4s from their local lumber yard,
right.
When you pull some of those guys off the bottom of the stack, you can almost see standing water.
Yeah.
Yeah, that question arises for sure, but like I said, just about every table saw I've ever had has had a cast iron top, and I'm not going to be putting puddled up water wood on my cast iron. That's just,
Technically, even if you want it to, though, you could just put it in bypass mode and run it through.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. Like I said, it's a little bit of a procedure. You basically turn the key, and you wait for the green light will flash, I believe, once, and then you have to have the key turned yet, and then it'll flash like twice or something like that, and it'll alert you. And there's a whole little diagram on the side of the switch that lets you know. But like I said, as soon as you finish that cut and you shut the saw off, it then enters back into safe mode. So if you're to do repetitive bypass cuts, then it could get a little bit, tedious.
A pain in the butt.
Now, yeah. I might have misunderstood, but I heard you say before you make any cut on it, you have to go through some sort of little ritual prior to making a cut.
Well, there's two essential, I guess you would call them power switches. One of which is powering up the computer and all of that. So if it is unplugged from the wall, you remove power from it completely. You plug it in the wall. You turn the power switch on. Then it goes through about a 6 or 7 second diagnosis of making sure the brake and everything works, and it just kind of makes sure that everything's happy. And once that's done, then there's a large paddle switch, which is actually kind of conveniently located to be right around where your left thigh resides. So when you're getting done making a cut and you're moving the wood out, all you have to do is kind of flex your left leg forward, and that paddle is depressed, and then so that diagnosis, 6 or 7 seconds, really only happens when you kind of start your work for the day.
Got it. All right, so after that, you can just walk up to it, turn it on, and away you go.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's kind of a neat feature too because once I have small kids, so I always try to make sure that everything is unplugged, and I don't know. I mean, those little yellow keys that you throw in and out. Yeah, it has one of those as well. But as kids get older, I think about every 11-year-old would realize you could stick a screwdriver in there and flip it up. But
there is a socket cover though, actually, that you can get you can unlock it when you leave, or a switch. If you hook everything up to a single switch, then you can put a lock on that switch. You can carry the key to your wood shop.
I'm not sure on this one. I can't quite see it from here, but I know a lot of the tools I have just have basically 2 holes drilled into each side of the toggle switch, to where if you were to put like just a regular lock on it, the switch would be incapable physically of passing that. I was a destructive child, so that wouldn't keep me out of anything.
That also gives you a lot of insight.
I mean, because I was the kind of kid where you give me a wire cutters, and chances are I could probably break around any safety measure that there really is. But
Were you one of the kids that stuck a bobby pin in the electrical thing to make sure that it was working?
no, but I was changing out some light switches for my mom when I was about 12, and I noticed that if I touched the hot side, it gave you kind of a cool little zinger. And I would say I repeated that maybe 3 or 4 times just out of curiosity.
But that is interesting. So in other words, if the power was to go out and you came home, you would have to go through that little setup. But as long as it stays plugged in, it pretty well, you don't have to do that every time. In other words.
Yeah, and I've actually been kind of, and this isn't unique to table saws, but I know like a lot of Laguna stuff, a lot of Bailey stuff. When it's powered, when it's plugged into an outlet, there's a power on light, like the machine is getting power, and I understand that that's kind of a safety mechanism. However, I don't want to shut the lights off to my shop. We're getting a little bit of feedback. Sorry, I don't know who it's from, but I don't like when I shut the lights off in my shop. I don't want to see 15, green LEDs still lit up. It's kind of a I don't know. It's just one of those things. Where are we getting the echo?
I'll mute.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was just I don't know. I mean, I would be curious to see what you guys think. Do you have any power tools to where when you plug it in, and imagine, I mean, a lot of these 220 things can be hardwired. There's that constant, and it's got to be an LED because I wouldn't imagine they would put an incandescent small bulb in there like that. You'd have what 10 or 15, however many pieces of equipment you have to constantly show that you have power going to that machine.
Well, in my shop, I designed it so that the breaker box is right there at the door, the exit. So when I walk out, I can throw the mains going off. Now, the bad part about that is anything that has like a timer or whatever, or a date, like your stereo or whatever, it can, after 24 hours or whatever, it loses the day or the time or that. So that's kind of a pain. And I've gotten to where in a habit that I don't do that as much, but I designed the shop just for that reason, so I could walk out and the last thing I can do, if I have any lights or anything on in the shop, it doesn't matter. I throw the main and everything's dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's my reason for shutting the main power switch off when I leave the shop, because I feel as though that green light does not need to be on while I'm sleeping.
Now, I've got a question for you, Nick. What kind of table saw did you own before this one, the saw stop?
The immediate table saw I owned before this was a rigid, and I don't know the model number specifically.
Yeah, but my point is this? I mean, I've been told by a lot of people, and I've saw the saw stop in a couple of woodworking shows, and it was a really, really nice saw. I've never cut on one, but my point is I know that there's no doubt in my mind that the money, as far as saving your finger, I mean, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. My question would be, though, does it cut that great?
Oh, it cuts superbly. I mean, it really, really does. And I alluded to it earlier, but the reason that I bought a saw stop is, and I'm sorry, Russ, I'm getting at least tons of feedback from you. I don't know.
All right, so I'll mute myself.
But Steve Johnson of Down to Earth Woodworks, he writes articles for Highland Woodworking, and he did a awesome comparative on the Delta Unisaw, the comparable Powermatic, and the saw stop. And it was just a beautifully written article. And I've seen the exact same thing in my trials and tribulations with this whole thing, because the Delta Unisaw, the Powermatic, and the saw stop, they're all very similarly priced as far as you're talking about professional cabinet makers. They're a cabinet saw. And toe for toe, feature for feature, pound for pound, they're pretty much all identical. The fence systems, the power, the trueness of the machining of the cast iron and things of that nature. And the saw stop actually comes in a couple $100 cheaper than its two competitors. And that's not even talking safety features. Then you include that SawStop has the safety feature, and you're like, it's kind of a no-brainer. And I've been fortunate enough that I work in local live theater. I volunteer for different organizations, high schools, colleges, and whatnot. So I've been on the Powermatics. I've been on the Delta Unisaws. Excellent, excellent machines all the way around, including the SawStop. It's just, for a couple $100 cheaper, and you get that little voice in the back of your head going, hey, your fingers are safe. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, that was my point. Yeah, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about the quality or the safety of having it, so that you don't mess up and lose a finger or whatever. So that's actually important. But I was curious as to if the quality of it is equal to like a Jet or Laguna or some of those nicer, and you just answered that question. So yeah, that's really good that they've incorporated the safety with a very nice saw. Now, I didn't get to look real good at your picture. What kind of fencing system? Does it use a Biesmeyer fencing system or its own?
I don't know who it's manufactured. I don't know if it's manufactured directly through SawStop, but it is a Biesmeyer T-Glide style fence. It's extremely accurate. In fact, I did when I set the saw up, I did a parallel check to the blade, to the miter slot, and then the miter slot to the fence. And the fence was, it was pretty much parallel. Now, with my fences, I like to run my fence with about like a 20 or 30 thou run out towards the back, just to eliminate any type of pinching. And I was able to adjust that pretty good. And the rest of it was, like I said, the cast iron was machined real well. I put the wings on. I don't own a straight edge, like a machinist straight edge, but a friend of mine does, and I borrowed that, and it was just flat. It was flat as can be, and way past what any woodworker would ever want to try and get it flat, anyways. But yeah, let me.
That's really good information.
Yeah, let me I'll switch back here to the below the table camera, and I'll just install the blade. You guys can kind of see the differences here. And I run Freud blades. I have been for a while. I've been a fan of Forrest and their Woodworker and Woodworker 2 blades. But I've been running just kind of combination cuts, the Freud Fusion blades, and I don't know. I just really dig them. That's just kind of my personal opinion. But I know, Russ, you were talking about other blades before as well. So, but anyways, yeah, and then I want to switch to camera too. So now that I got the arbor nut on and everything, and we're good to go. SawStop does just a lot of neat little tiny things that you don't necessarily ever think about when purchasing a saw, but their wrenches are offset. So many wrenches and so many table saws I've bought. You're sitting here like this, and you're kind of a knuckle breaking action, and they're shorter, and you're nicking the carbide. And I'm not trying to turn this into an advertisement for SawStop. I'm just a super happy customer. They're not paying me to say anything. And then another thing too with table saws for any beginners, I just tighten them up just ever so slightly. You don't have to have a gorilla grip on it. The way that the threads are set on the arbor is actually tightens as you cut wood. So, but not everybody and their brother knows that. And go ahead.
I've noticed that too. No, I've noticed that too. Sometimes I've worked on other people's table saws, and when we went to change the blade, it was like, wow, did you really have to tighten this thing down? And I don't think a lot of people understand that the threads are designed so when it's running the opposite direction, so it tightens the nut as it's turning.
Yeah. You don't need, like I said, the strength of a gorilla to tighten them down, but most experienced woodworkers do that. I just figured I'd throw that in there just as a tidbit, because I don't know. But modern saws now come with a riving knife. I would, and this might require a little bit of talking, but the riving knife is really kind of a cool thing. They have the actual standard, what do you want to call it, the blade guard with the clear acrylic or polycarbonate, and there's obviously a splitter built in. and then the anti-kickback pawls that are supposed to keep. I don't think I've ever used one of those. I probably shouldn't legitimately say that, but I mean I've been woodworking for 20 years. I really like to see my cuts, and although SawStop has a really nice quick change, which I'm about to show by installing the riving knife, I don't use the guard on my saw. It's just not something I've done for a long time. That probably, like I said, not the proper thing to be saying, but yeah, that's just riving knives. For those that aren't familiar, it's to keep the wood from after it exits the blade cut to pinch together, hence causing that kickback, because at that point in the blade is coming in an upward fashion, and if it's going to pinch at the back of the blade, it wants to throw the back of that wood up and then eventually come into the teeth. And then another thing that causes kickback is if you have a blade sitting here like this and then the wood is running through and it comes into contact with that back, it wants to come back at you. So I'm a big fan of riving knives, or they make aftermarket splitters that you can drill out your zero clearance insert plates. And let me just grab one, for example.
I think it's kind of funny because up until the last 15 years, when I bought the saw that I have right now, which is a contractor saw, the saws that I owned previously, none of them had riving knives or any kind of blade guard. I mean, they just didn't make them back then.
Yeah, I had a Craftsman contractor saw that obviously if you're going to have a blade guard, that it has to have a splitter, because that's actually where they support the blade guard. But like I said earlier, I'm just not a fan of a chintzy piece of plastic, and I don't even care how heavy duty it is, blocking my view of the blade. I like to see where the blade is. I like to be cognizant of it at all times. But even if you don't have a riving knife, they make kits to where in your insert you can drill holes towards the back of the blade and actually have those splitters. And that helps out a lot, because if you're cutting any type of dimensional lumber or anything from the home center to where it's not at least like a 6 or 7% moisture content, you're gonna get. I mean, I've literally cut select pine and like number 2 pine, and I've seen it come off the blade and literally just start to bow. There's just too much tension in some of that wood, and it's just too wet. But anyways, I digress. Let me go back to this, and I'll throw that riving knife in the
Real quick, does anybody on the panel have any questions? Everybody's being quiet, I noticed.
Yeah, so as you're putting in that riving knife, I use a lot of 7 1/4 inch blades on my table saw just because they're a lot cheaper than the 10-inch, and usually don't need the full 10-inch capacity anyway. What will your little braking mechanism work with a much smaller blade? Much like my dado is only 8-inch too. So.
No, the brake cartridges are designed for the diameter of the blade, and let me show you. I obviously have the other cartridge in the blade, but they make a dado cartridge, and obviously it's wider. The actual brake is wider, but the offset from the electronics accounts for it being a 8-inch dado stack. And I believe SawStop also says on their website that it cannot be the chippers cannot be full blade chippers. You know how some dado stacks, it's almost a full 8-inch diameter, and then there's just a tooth. And they're saying, it still may work, but they're advising against it because the inertia with that much more steel on the arbor could render the braking mechanism essentially useless. But luckily I have, let me just grab it real quick. I don't believe they make the Delta dado stack anymore, but the same patent number, the exact same patent number, is the DeWalt dado stack, if I'm correct on that. But the chippers are actually not a full blade chipper. They're a kind of a star configuration, like a 4-point star, something to this effect. And like I said, SawStop is, I'm guessing, I'm not one of their engineers, but the chippers on some of the dados actually come out right here, and that amount of material, if you're doing say 3/4, is going to add quite a bit of weight spinning around that arbor. And I think they're worried that inertia is not it's going to overcome the actual brake mechanism itself. So they don't recommend the full ones, but no, it's a good question. You cannot run a 8-inch dado stack on a 10-inch saw stop brake. It will not. It won't save you. It won't work.
Well, yeah, you can run it. It just won't do what it's designed to do.
Exactly. Yeah, it'll give you that false sense of security, and then God forbid it actually happens, and it just doesn't stop it. So. Hey,
Nick, I had a question for you.
Yeah.
I saw as you was holding that the brake up just a minute ago. Is the brake just basically a big chunk of aluminum that the blade cuts into and then stops? Is that how it works?
Yeah, for the most part. The blue part of it houses all the electronics in the actual ignition system, and I've been told through SawStop that it's very similar to the ignition system in an airbag for a vehicle. The aluminum, being a fairly malleable metal, they have designed this in its geometry not only so that the carbide, much harder than aluminum, digs in, but then these particular bridges of the aluminum compress and distort to absorb the energy, the inertia from the spinning, and then obviously it then pivots, and that's how it drops below the table.
I have a question.
Yeah.
That's aluminum. Can you take that aluminum piece out and put another aluminum piece in?
No, I don't know why you'd want to do that.
Because if you could replace it and reuse, and all you had to do was use, say, an X-carve to cut out the aluminum piece.
No. The reason they don't do that is because in the event of skin contact, the actual propellant that discharges it, that would be null and void at that point. Okay. And then all you're looking at, and this looks like just a big capacitor inside here. And then you're talking about inside this probably 30-40 cents worth of plastic, probably not even a $4 board.
What are those?
By the time you try to service this part, it'd probably be cheaper. Oh, and by the way, too, and like I said, I don't get sponsored by SawStop. They've never given me a penny. They never give me a saw nor a product. But there's kind of a proverbial black box in here. And if you send a discharged brake to them, and through the computer it says because of skin contact, they will send you a brand new brake for free.
Okay, that answers exactly what I was trying to ask.
Yeah. Now if you're cutting wet wood, and I don't know the specifics, like how would they
follow the rules
versus your finger? But
if it's your finger, then cool, we'll send you a new one. But if you don't follow the rules and you screw it and you shoot it, well, you pay for a new one.
And ultimately, and people always reside back on the question of how much does the brake cost, how much does the blade, because it wrecks the blade, how much does the blade cost? And the Freud Fusions right now by me are about $100, $110. And then, but I've never in my life, whether it's on a SawStop or other brand, run my finger into the blade. I just haven't done it. And I know some people on the panel may have done that. That is not, this cartridge could be $300. The blade could be $300, and it would be a good $600 lesson learned to where my finger's not harmed. That's the way I look at it.
Well, I have run my finger through a table saw, and I can tell you right now, it would have been a lot more affordable for me to have a SawStop than the table saw I was working on, because it cost a little bit of money to get my finger fixed.
Well, I was going to say, it's not only the fact that you could lose a digit, but the trip to the hospital. If you go to an emergency room, I got news for you, and the time you get stitches and they charge you all they're going to charge you can't walk in an emergency room and walk out for less than $5,000.
No.
Yeah. So you're looking at this couple of $100 for the blade and for the mechanism that you just messed up. So to me, it's like a no-brainer. It actually paid for itself just by saving you the hospital trip.
Yeah, not to mention that's cheaper than the price of the saw to begin with. So really, for one hospital visit, you can keep your finger, get the saw, and an extra cartridge and blade.
Right.
But is there no common insurance?
But here's where the attitude comes from, because if you're sitting here as an everyday guy and you're looking at the price of a saw stop, you're going, oh my God, that's expensive as hell. And they are. I mean, I'm sorry, they are. If I expected to run my finger through a friggin' table saw, would I have spent the money? Yes. But most people look at that and go, I'm never gonna have that accident, so why should I spend that money? And it's not until it actually happens to you that you realize, you know what, that would have been a good investment. I'm sorry I didn't make it.
Yeah.
So Nick, I understand you're not an expert. I should look this up myself though. But you're talking about the my Freud 8-inch dado stack. My cutters and my chippers are actually 8 1/8 inch end to end, like my Freud chippers. So those would not work at all in that.
Oh, no, they would. Let me actually switch to, and I don't know if this camera is going to pick it up. Hopefully it does. I'm going to have to try and turn, because I didn't expect to try and get this camera shot in here. However, with all the newer saw stops, they give you this little magnetic, it's an Allen wrench, hexagonal wrench, whatever you want to call it, and then a gauge. And that gauge measures the amount of, if you could switch to camera 1, that gauge actually measures the distance between the tips of your teeth, your carbide teeth, and the brake pawl itself.
Okay.
So I mean, it's not much of a distance. However, let's switch to camera 2. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to show this or not. Let's see here. There is a yellow bolt, and this is probably not picking this up. And that's where this Allen wrench fits. And that actually does the fine-tune adjustment. And there's a good 1/8 of an inch, if not a closer to a 1/4 inch adjustment.
Okay.
And that's to make up for manufacturing error of diameter blades. You want to switch to camera 1. So does that answer the question?
I believe so. And also, cover this one more time, Nick. There's a couple of questions over on YouTube. Dan Inglewood had one of them too. And refresh everybody. It does destroy not only the cartridge, but it does destroy the blade, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Welding, I used to do welding. I'm going to try and make this story real quick and short. I used to do TIG and MIG welding. Another type of welding fascination of mine is explosive welding, where they take 2 dissimilar metals, lay them horizontal, and they put a bunch of explosives on the top. And they can weld stainless to brass. And it's the inertia of the 2 metals coming together. I don't necessarily think that's the forces involved here with the carbide teeth touching the aluminum, but by the time the geometry of the aluminum has changed and the carbide has embedded itself in there, I wouldn't even want to trust a blade after that. I mean, you're talking $100. Nice blade, and you're talking about I either touched wet wood or I touched my finger. It's well worth it just to replace it. And like I said, I'm not trying to turn this into a saw stop thing. I have other table saw things I can talk about, but I was actually going to reference safety glasses. Oddly enough, I'm not a big safety Sally. However, I had bought a off-brand table saw blade, brand new, going into a brand new saw. And of course, I was anxious to fire it up. I fired it up, and I thought there was absolutely no reason for me to have safety glasses on. I'm not cutting anything. All of a sudden, I heard a ting, 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 and then I'm looking around. I shut the saw down. I looked up on the ceiling, and here was a large track mark and a carbide tooth in my ceiling. So, I mean, that's obviously part of table saw safety, is to stay out of the plane of the actual blade, because if one of those teeth were to give loose, that's the trajectory it's going to end up.
That's wireless chainsaw right there.
Yeah, exactly. And so if I were to have a table saw blade dig in with like 6 teeth into an aluminum pawl that was just chewed up all gnarly, I wouldn't even examine it for straight. I wouldn't even try and separate them. I would say, I just saved some fingers, or I screwed up by cutting wet wood, and it's time to get a new blade. So yeah,
Hey,
it does wreck the blade.
Hey Nick,
Yeah.
you mentioned the bypass feature on that. Have you yourself used that, and if so, how many times have you, like what percentage of when you're cutting, do you have to turn that off because of wet wood?
Well, for me, for wet wood, I've never used the bypass feature for wet wood. I had, though, made a table saw sled that involved a fair amount of aluminum extrusion. And part of that was having to make the kerf cut in the back. And I had to, being it's a conductive material, have to run it in bypass mode. And I guess when you invest that amount of money into a saw and you realize that there are, $100 blade, $80 cartridge at the ready to be ruined, I guess you have a heightened awareness to say, okay, I'm cutting metal, I'm not going to. And most of the metal I cut out on my miter saw to length and whatnot, but to actually cut through, with the actual making the kerf in the table saw sled itself, no, I had to run it in bypass mode 7 or 8 times now since I've owned the saw. And like I said, it's a keyed, and I believe I would be willing to bet $100 that is by design by the saw stop engineers to say this needs to be a intuitive manual operation that you are disabling this. It's not just a toggle to where you disable it and then 4 years later you haven't had the protection the whole time. So.
Yeah, that's a good safety feature. In other words, after you quit using it and come back, it resets. You have to reset it or turn it back to manual again. That keeps, just what you said, that keeps that from happening. I'm also interested in, we've got about another 15 minutes before the end of the show, also interested in that your sled. I'd like for you to show that and talk a little bit about it if you could.
Yeah, let me change to camera 2 and let's see if it's not even pointed in the right direction. Let me try and move it. Let's see here. More. Let me try and move some of my so-called props out the way. Yeah, no, the sled was kind of a unique thing that I had come up with a few years ago, and I thought it was kind of cool because I didn't want to dink around with having a crosscut sled and a miter saw sled or a miter sled as a separate jig. I'm in a 2-stall garage, which I know a lot of people would consider a large shop, but as anyone woodworking for 20 years realizes, the tools accumulate way quicker than the space expands.
Did your plate just lock in?
Yes, I was talking with my buddy Patrick from Patrick's Workshop the other day, and we were going over the finer points of the saw stop. And yeah, it's got a cam action switch to the front of it to where the plate cannot come up. It's not magnets. It's not an interference fit. It's a mechanical connection to where this hoop needs to get pulled up, and that unlocks it. And on the back side, there are tabs that go into to screws. That I'm going to sound like a saw stop fanboy. I understand that, and I got no problem with that. But they do so many things above and beyond what any other saw on the market does that I was proud to pay what I paid for it. So.
Well, Nick, you clearly have reason to stand behind this product. It makes you feel comfortable, and it adds that entire structure that's even economically viable to you for the protection.
Yeah, let me slide. If there's any questions this time, I'm just going to slide in my crosscut.
Yeah, I don't mind at all you promoting it because as soon as I can afford one, I'm going to end up getting one. It's just a little, I know it's a little pricey, but I'm going to end up getting one. I have a Craftsman contractor saw that I've owned for, it's got to be 10, 12 years now, and at the time when I purchased it, it was great for what I was using it for because I was doing construction, and it was the table folds up, it all folds into one nice package. I could take it to the job site and use it, and then bring it. Now I've pretty well built a table around it and made it my primary saw. It's inferior as far as the cuts are not that great. The blade I have on it has made a lot of difference, but I want to get a better saw. I've never intended on keeping that saw forever. So that's one of the good things of having you do this tonight, is it just convinced me more that that's probably the way I'm going to go, as a saw stop.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, and the safety feature to me was just an ancillary benefit. It was pound for pound, feature for feature, competed with all the other name brands, and it was a few dollars cheaper. So
I would like to point out, though, that, like you said earlier, Bosch is coming out with technology. So different companies are going to come out with solutions and competitive, the same kind of thing. Lower that price and make it actually. So this market has a very good chance of changing pretty soon.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, if that actually happens, and there are other companies that jump on board with this safety technology, eventually the price on these saws has to come down. I understand it's a fantastic cabinet saw, but I also understand it's out of the price range of a lot of guys. A lot of people that would like to have it, but just can't afford it. It would be nice to see,
like Nick is pointing out, it's simple technology and a simple mold of aluminum, so it's really not that expensive.
Well, I mean, yeah, the technology, but like I said, the fence that they've done, the iron castings, I actually don't suspect the price to come down, even if there's competition, because they're right up there, toe to toe, with Powermatic and Delta's Unisaw. So
don't get me wrong, I don't mind paying extra money for ingenuity and great engineering and quality work. You know, like there's worth paying for.
No, I guess as kind of a woodworker hobbyist, I agree. I mean, heck, if I had the money, I'd buy a Powermatic or a Delta Unisaw or maybe even a saw stop. But for the average guy in his workshop that's looking to have a table saw that has those kind of safety features and also has that kind of quality to it, it would be nice to see some other people enter the market and create a little competition, because that has to bring the price down a little bit to where people like me can afford to have that kind of luxury, I guess is what I'm saying.
Your general hobbyist isn't going to go pay $5,000 or $3,000 for a cabinet saw anyway.
No.
The technology being so simple, and probably the patent may be running out or being able to be modified if Bosch is able to use it, then that's going to be equipped on your cheaper model saws, we'll call, or contract style saws, to where it's still a cabinet saw or a professional high use, high performing machine that costs money.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree.
It'll be like the riving knives. The riving knives, you can't sell a saw without having the riving knives in it now for the last 5-6 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Where that's a law now, and I'm sure within the next 5 to 10 years it'll be some sort of safety law that kind of technology has to be within a saw.
Yeah, what I think we're bouncing around here is what Nick has is not only a saw stop, he's got a high-end cabinet saw. It's just saw, because saw stop makes it doesn't mean anything. It's a high-end saw, just like the Jet or Powermatic or whatever. And I think what Chris is mentioning is the fact it's not. He wants to see that technology filter down into the less expensive for the hobbyist, like the Bosch saw or like the Craftsman start using or something, where those type of people that do I call them weekend woodworkers, can afford to buy a table saw that doesn't break the bank, but yet has that finger-saving technology, so to speak.
That's what I was getting at. It's worth noting that, like Russ had said, I bought, without going to their like 7 or 5 horse, industrial model, I have the top of the line saw stuff. They also make a job site saw, a portable job site saw with the technology built in. They also have a contractor style, which is kind of a hybrid style saw, where it's a standalone, and that's where Bosch is competing with. I believe it's either their job site or their contractor. And I agree, there's going to be competition in that sector, but until Bosch says we're going to make a full-fledged cabinet to compete not only with SawStop, but Delta Unisaw, Powermatic, and Laguna, then they're going to be kind of out of that market. That's why I don't think the price is going to change unless they jump into that market. But
Yeah, see, and even then, they're going to make it to such a quality to compete with the big boys in the cabinet style saws that the price aren't. It's not going to come down for those. The technology will just be
No, I agree. And the reason why I brought that up is because I thought that the competition in the marketplace would bring the price down, and to have a quality tool that is now priced at $2,000, it might end up getting knocked down a couple of years from now and to being a $1,500 tool. And I'm not, $1,500. Well, maybe not, Rich. I don't know. It just seems like if there's more competition coming into the market, the price has to come down because they start competing with each other. And right now, SawStop owns the market.
But I mean, how dramatic? I mean, I don't want to talk about price too much, but how dramatically did Lamborghini come down when Tesla came in? It really didn't change anything. I mean, you're talking about a higher caliber market. It really didn't affect the prices all that much.
No, you got a point. No, you're right. I agree with you.
Yeah,
but I do like the competition. I like, and Bosch. Bosch has their own unique patent actually on it. Rather than having a kickback pawl go into the blade, Bosch is taking the whole trunnion out of the way, and it saves the blade.
Right.
So I would love to test out a Bosch. I mean, yeah. I mean, but that's the type of woodworking I do is this contract. I mean, I dig that it's pretty much vibration free on any saw. The fences there and all that. But let me just touch real quickly on the table saw sled here, real quick.
Yeah, I want to touch. We only got about 10 or so minutes. So yeah, I want you to go over that real quick because I'm really interested in that. I want to build one like it.
This one I did. It was. It's a rather larger table saw sled, and the base material itself is 3/4, which makes it a little bit on the heavy side, but so am I, so we match really well. And but these T-tracks in here, that was going to be for future expansion to allow other jigs, and then this top track is just so that I have a nice dead stop that I can swing out of the way. I can do my squaring on one end, swing it back, and then cut it to final length. But this is a sled that I've wanted to build for many years because you see guys building miter sleds all the time aside as a separate standalone. But then I came out with the miter saw or the miter sled insert. That way, with just a couple quarter 20 hexagonal bolts slid into that track and then a couple star knobs, you can lock this bad boy in place. And you can. I mean, I've done picture frame projects already, to where I'm zipping on one side to get my angle, and then my depth or my length angle, and boom, I'm just going through it. And of course, I don't have this mounted right now, but it's just crazy accurate. I'm loving this thing like crazy, but
and
yeah.
Nick, I seen the video you made on this, and you explained it so well. That video is so well put together, and it just makes putting this together like. You get the plans and you can put it together pretty quick.
Is Nick paying you, Jason?
No, I
appreciate that, Jason. And it has actually been my #1 video on YouTube since I've been doing this for almost 2 years. So
I still say you're paying him.
My painting actually went over like a pregnant pole vaulter as far as mass appeal, but.
No, I saw that. I watched the video, and Jason is right. It was a very good video, and as soon as I saw that, because I'd been wanting to make, I do most of my stuff on my. I have a Delta slide miter saw, compound slider, and I've got it set really, really accurate as far as to make picture frames. I don't have any problems, but the problem being is if I change that saw in any way. To make other cuts rather than a 45, for instance, for the corner of a picture frame, I have to go through the process of setting it back up to get it really accurate, and so therefore I can see making a sled like that would be then I wouldn't have to do nothing but just put the miter part back on it, and boom, I'm off making picture frames because it takes me probably 15-20 minutes to set that saw up to get it back accurate again.
And another thing, and I'll wrap this up because. I want to hear from other people, and we got like 3 minutes left, so I took up 57 minutes of it. But these Wixie angle finder gauges, I'm sure most of you guys own them. It's called, as far as setting up your blade to be 100% 90 degrees to the table saw top itself.
Those are awesome.
I bought this like 2 months ago. It was the first time I absolutely love the thing.
Whatever angle you want to set to the decimal of tenth.
Yeah.
It's very. I have one. I love it too.
Yep.
So now I'll try and be quiet for the remaining 3 minutes and see what anyone else has to say. We could do it.
Nick, and that's why I wanted you to be, and that's every week when I have somebody on the show. That's the purpose of this show. Is I wanted a show where we go into people's shops, they show off their tool, they have a specialty tool that they have or something they've done, because I've learned so much here in the last few shows, and I know some of the people on the show here tonight have learned a lot. So it's great. Don't worry that you say you've taken up 57 minutes. That's fine. That's what the intention was.
Well, I'm just saying. There's 3 minutes left. Somebody else?
Yeah. Anybody got on the panel? Got any more questions before we?
I just went to Saw Stop and built my own saw. It's going to cost me $4,500.
Oh, you must have what? 5 horse or 7 horse?
No, I went with a 1 horse.
They don't make a 1 horse.
Or let's go back to it. No, it's $44.82 for everything I want on my build my saw. Outfeed table with a T-cross and a 1 3/4 horse.
Well, like I said, I am not a Saw Stop rep. You don't want their outfeed table. Come on, you're a woodworker. Make a good outfeed table. That's junk. You're just gonna end up.
Hey, Russ Meadows, did you need for him to repeat what triggers the brake system?
No.
Okay, I've seen you put. Wasn't that you that put that over there?
I'd said that be helping out Chris Cute fund me page so he can get a bunch of cartridges.
Oh, okay. All right. Anybody else got anything? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well, I hope Russ has nothing more to say.
Nick, did you get a professional or industrial saw?
Professional, yeah. The industrial, you're going to pay at least 30% more, at least. And I've been on both. One of the theaters that I do a lot of work for, they're on a 5-horse industrial, and I'm on the 3-horse professional. And aside from the motors coming out of the trunnions on the opposite side, there's not much of a difference.
Okay. You're happy with it, though, and everything else?
I couldn't be any happier. I really, really couldn't. My first table saw I got when I think I was 13, and it was an aluminum top contractor, 159, 189, jobby, and that thing barked and jumped around so bad to where the depth stop crank wheel, I had to have a vice grip on it. That's how I set the depth stop, because it would vibrate the blade up or down depending on what mood it was in that day. And I already have girlfriends and wives. I don't necessarily need to figure out what my table saw's mood is.
My Craftsman does that.
All right, guys. We got just a few more minutes here. Appreciate everybody watching.
I want to hear Dave say something. I'm appreciative Dave Gatton's here. I'm a big fan of Dave.
Yeah, he snuck in the back door. He said he was having problems. I sent him the link. Apparently you got it fixed, right, Dave?
Yeah, I think I was actually clicking on the wrong link all that time. So.
Okay. It was operator error then.
Yeah, I couldn't miss a show with Nick Ferry on it for sure.
Damn it, he's paying you too.
Man, my wife's gonna be mad when she sees my PayPal account after this night.
Jeez. So, Dave, if you real quick want to, I know you got in late, but real quick want to tell everybody where we can find you at.
You can find me on YouTube under Dave Gatton, and you can find me on Facebook and Twitter. On Facebook, I'm Dave Gatton, Sidewinder CNC, and you can also find my website at www.cncsidewinder.com.
There you have it. Okay. Once again, thanks for everybody being on the panel. I really appreciate you being here tonight.
Hey, Russ, could I say one more thing real quick?
Sure. Go ahead.
Hey, Nick, the other day I was watching one of your Periscope things. I'm a big fan of your little Periscope broadcast, and I think that's where I heard you say it. But are you guys the YouTube people tentatively planning in April 1st? Did I hear you say that?
You did hear me say it. It just you were listening too well because I tried to say it where nobody would hear me.
Well, with me being right here next to it, that's my backyard, Steve Carmichael's backyard. So yeah, that made my ears perk up when I heard you say that.
We, in fact, Carmichael was an integral part of the planning because he had known one of the people to set up the woodworking show, and they said they wanted some YouTube presence at one of their shows, and so I had talked with Steve, and they said yeah, and the gentleman that Steve originally spoke with, I guess, is no longer working with the woodworking show, so we're talking with Bryce. He owns the woodworking show. We don't have anything in concrete, solid, anything yet. But we're really hoping to attend. We're really hoping to attend the Atlanta show April 1st through the 3rd. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that's a really great show. I go to that one all the time, and that place is always packed. So I was really excited when I heard you say that. I hope that comes to fruition.
I hope it does too, because I mean that's only 6 months away, and we're kind of scrambling here because if they don't get back to us, we're gonna have to pick another show. So.
Well, that's close enough for me to go. That's Atlanta's only about 8 hours for me.
All right, this just in, we're changing it, being Russ is so close.
That's all right. I done figured Nick's not going to be on the show no more. Dave's not going to be on my show anymore. Jason's not going to be on my show anymore. Yeah, I'll eliminate the problem real quick. No, but in all sincerity, thanks, guys, for being here. Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate and fantastic job in explaining everything. Much appreciated. Thank you for everyone. I'll get it out in a second. Watching over on YouTube. I hope we answered everyone's question. I've been trying to go over here, and if I said this before, if everybody sees me looking over, I've got my other computer over here, and I watch YouTube to see if anybody has questions. So I'm not trying to be rude or ignore you. So, but I appreciate everybody watching. And one thing I would just want to, we didn't do a Woodshop Confessions, which I said that one time before. We're not going to have time, everybody. To do that every show, and it'd get boring because we're all going to run out of confessions after a while. But I kind of like to highlight a woodworker that I see that is kind of new and refreshing on YouTube. And one of the guys that I've seen that is really kind of like comical, and he's made me laugh a few times by watching him on YouTube, and that's Donald Vlogsfly, I believe is the way he pronounces his name. He's on YouTube. He's kind of new to YouTube. He's just started. You got to watch his videos. He'll make you laugh. He did the casket the other day for his chisels. He made a casket, and he's kind of a funny guy. So just a shout out to Donald Vlogsfly. If you get a chance, check him out on YouTube. He's got some good videos over there, and it'll make you smile. With that being said, thanks for everybody watching. This is the end of the show. Y'all have a good day, and God bless.
Thanks for having me, man.